My name is Daisy. I am 29 years old, and my life has always been quiet. Every morning I followed the same routine. Wake up, make tea, pack my lunch, and walk to the bus stop. Nothing exciting, nothing new, just the same slow rhythm that made my days feel like copies of each other. Sometimes I watched people rush to work, talking on phones, laughing with friends, or drinking coffee on the go. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I just stood there waiting for my bus, holding my bag, thinking about everything and nothing at the same time. But one morning, something different happened. Someone new was standing at the bus stop, a man I had never seen before. He looked calm, peaceful. He held a small book in his hand, and read it as if the world around him didn't bother him at all. His name, I later learned, was Darren. That first morning, he didn't speak. He didn't look around. He simply read his book and waited. But even in the silence, something about him felt warm, like sunshine on a cold day. The next day, he was there again. And the next, it became a new part of my routine, seeing him standing there with his book. One morning, he finally looked up. Our eyes met for a second. He smiled softly and said, "Morning." My heart jumped in a way I had never felt before. I smiled back, trying to look calm, even though my stomach felt strange and fluttery. From that day on, everything began to shift. My mornings weren't just mornings anymore. They carried something new, something I didn't have a word for yet. But I liked it, and I didn't know then that this small smile from a stranger would take root inside me, slowly, quietly, changing everything I thought I knew about love. After the first morning, something changed between us. We started talking, not big conversations, just small ones. Simple words that felt special. He asked, "You take this bus every day?" I nodded and said, "Yes, you too." He smiled and said, "Since last week." Sometimes we talked about the weather, how the sky looked heavy with rain, or how the morning felt colder than usual. Sometimes we talked about books. He always had one with him. "Do you like reading?" he once asked. "Yes," I said, "but I don't find much time." He smiled softly. "Maybe you should. Stories help the heart breathe." He said it so gently that I remembered it the whole day. Every morning became a moment I waited for. I woke up earlier, chose nicer clothes, added a little perfume. Not for anyone else, but for the man with the book. Darren. I didn't realize it at first, but my heart started to beat differently whenever I saw him walking toward the bus stop. His smile made my chest feel warm. His voice made the quiet morning feel alive. He never flirted. He never said anything bold. But the way he talked, the way he listened, it felt like he saw me. Me, the girl who always blended into the background. One morning he said, "You look tired. Long week." I nodded a little. He replied, "Don't forget to take care of yourself." A simple sentence, but no one had said something like that to me in a long time. That day I understood something. Sometimes the smallest gestures touch the deepest parts of your heart. We weren't close friends. We weren't anything more. But those little conversations, those shared moments, they became big meanings to me. And slowly, silently, my heart began to wait for the man at the bus stop. One morning, the sky was soft and pink. I walked faster than usual, excited to see him. But when I reached the bus stop, my heart stopped. Darren was there, but he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, her hand gently looped around his arm. She looked graceful, warm, and confident. They were laughing, not loudly, just a quiet happiness between them. My chest tightened. Darren looked up, saw me, and his eyes lit up. "Daisy, good morning," he said. I forced a smile, hoping it looked real. He turned to the woman and said, "This is Daisy. We take the bus together." Then he said the sentence that cut through me quietly. "This is my wife, Eliza." Wife. The word echoed inside me like a slow, heavy bell. I smiled at her and said, "Nice to meet you." She smiled back warmly. She was kind, too kind, and that somehow made it hurt more. The three of us talked for a minute. Well, they talked. I mostly nodded and tried to keep my voice steady. When the bus came, he waved at me from the window. I waved back. But the moment they disappeared, something inside me broke. I had imagined things, created meanings that never existed, built feelings based on small smiles and simple words. He wasn't mine. He was never mine. He belonged to someone else. And the truth hit me harder than I expected. That morning, I learned something painful. You can fall for someone quietly, without planning it. But that doesn't mean the world will fall into place for you. Some people light up your mornings, but not your life. The next morning, I stood at the bus stop as usual. But everything felt different. He arrived with his usual soft smile. But now I saw the gold ring on his finger more clearly. How did I miss it? How had I been so blind? My heart felt heavy, but I kept my face calm. He didn't know what was happening inside me. And he never would. When he asked, "Are you okay? You seem quiet today." I simply said, "Just a long week." It was a lie, but some truths are too painful to speak. We talked a little, but every word felt sharp inside my chest. When the bus came, I sat by the window and looked at the passing streets. He sat farther away with his book. I watched his reflection in the window and hated myself for it. That evening I went home and cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just soft, quiet tears, the kind that fall when your heart is tired. I told myself, stop thinking about him. But my mind didn't listen. Days passed. We still saw each other. We still talked. But I felt the distance that had never been there before. Every time I saw him talking to his wife at the bus stop, a tiny part of me broke again. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to love someone who wasn't mine. Someone who never would be. But feelings don't ask permission before entering your heart. And sometimes love isn't beautiful. Sometimes it just hurts quietly and teaches you lessons you never asked for. One evening, I decided to walk home after work. The sky was cloudy and the air smelled like rain. I needed space. I needed to breathe. I reached a small park and sat on a bench. Children were playing. Birds were chirping. Life was moving on, even if my heart wasn't. Then I saw them. Darren and his wife, walking hand in hand. Laughing gently. Looking at each other with the kind of love that didn't need words. He lifted her hand and kissed it softly. She leaned on his shoulder. They looked like they belonged to each other. And in that moment, something inside me finally understood. He wasn't meant for me. His world wasn't mine. His happiness wasn't mine to take. Tears filled my eyes, but I wiped them away before they could fall. I didn't want to cry over someone who wasn't mine. I whispered to myself, "It's time to let go." Not because I stopped caring, but because holding on was hurting more than letting go ever could. That evening, I made a quiet promise to myself to stop waiting for mornings, to stop hoping for things that weren't real, to start choosing myself again. Letting go wasn't easy. It felt like pulling roots from the ground. But sometimes the heart needs empty space to grow again. The next morning, I still went to the bus stop. But something felt different. I stood straighter. I breathed deeper. My heart still ached, but it wasn't breaking anymore. When Darren arrived, he smiled warmly. "Good morning," he said. I smiled back. A real smile this time. Not because of him, but because I had finally accepted the truth. We talked a little, just like before. But I didn't wait for his words the way I used to. I didn't look for signs that were never meant for me. He belonged to his world. I belonged to mine. When the bus came, I sat alone, opened a book, and allowed myself to disappear into a story that wasn't about heartbreak. As the bus moved, I looked out the window and whispered, "I'm going to be okay." And I was. Days turned into weeks. And slowly, the ache faded. I started reading more, smiling more, living more. And one morning, I realized something beautiful. Some people come into your life to show you what your heart can feel. Not to stay forever, but to remind you that you are capable of loving deeply. Even if the love is silent, even if the love is impossible. Now, when I think of Darren, I don't feel pain. I just feel grateful. He lit up my mornings, but I learned to light up my own life. And that's enough.